Hey, good evening, everybody. It is the Sunday night webinar. It's September 9th, and welcome to a new year of Sunday night webinars. We hope to have them going throughout the year and to show you some really good things. Hopefully, you'll pick up some tech tools, and if you have any questions or concerns, we certainly hope that you'll bring them to us. Email us. I'm Gene Colbago,
And I am Roger Carroll.
And we have a special guest tonight. I think he's unmiked. Are you unmiked, Mr. Dave?
I muted myself, but I am here.
Okay. And Dave Glahey.
Whatever.
Dave Glahey's with us tonight to help us out. To show you tonight. I guess our special question is, why do I need Office 365? Because this is a huge tool that the board has provided for all of us. As we were just saying a few minutes ago, that it is a tool that is useful in the classroom, and it's actually a tool that they have provided you for your use at home too. If you wish to use it at home, you certainly can do that. So we're going to get going on that, but before we go, just a few little items. Let me just get rid of our little screen. Let me get rid of our little screen here again.
Gene, have you started the recording? I don't see it.
I have started the recording. It says stop recording. So
okay.
I see it on mine. Yes, I do.
Good. Good enough.
I can see at the bottom of my my window that it says the session is being recorded.
Okay. Hey, yeah. A couple of things very quickly. When you first got the things, you probably went to the Teacher Resource Center to register, and this is where we will do this. Now, when you attend, you do get an hour credit from the Teacher Resource Center, and a couple of people have asked me what that credit amounts to for like salary increase and so forth and so on, and that's really best answered by the Teacher Resource Center itself. So if you're with us and have those sorts of questions, I think if you called Demita at the TRC, she'd be very glad to assist you with that, because that's more in her line. Again, this is where every week we will be putting up the registration. And I think that, are we going to, Raj, have a survey for a while, at least weekly?
Well, if we do, it will be right where you're pointing.
Yeah. The register, that's why I don't have the register now. I know some people like to register for all of them at once, and we like to have you do that, of course. But we'll be putting that up tomorrow morning, the register for next week. And you might want to register for next week, because next week we have a special guest. Mr. Laurie will be joining us, and he'll be discussing, the state of the district and some things, the initiatives and programs that are going on. And if you have any questions, perhaps the form, the survey, might allow you to send some questions in that Mr. Laurie would be able to respond to. So we hope you'll join us next week with Mr. Laurie. So that would be great. So I'm sorry, to go back just one little bit, again, about that credit. What happens is this, and we'll repeat this at the end very quickly. At the end of the survey, or end of the webinar, you will receive a thank you for attending. That is a good little email to keep, so you can keep track of the ones that you have gotten credit for. But also, I put in, and Roger and I have put in a little survey inside that. So we ask you to open the thank you and click on the survey and complete that. And on Friday of this week, what I do is I download the report and I send it to the Teacher Resource Center. And those people who have attended will be given 1 hour of Teacher Resource Center credit. Okay? So if there's nothing else about that, what we're going to do tonight is, I think the first thing that we're going to do is, we've been asking people to take that survey. So in order to introduce Office 365, we're going to, I guess, introduce one of the tools on it, and that's the survey, and we're going to show you why we asked you to take that and what you can do with it in your classroom. So, Roger, you ready to take over?
I am.
Okay. Oh, this is a little different. Verify presenter change. It's just a little different. Okay, I see you there. I don't know. Okay, you are on the screen.
Very good. I have signed in to my Office 365 account. Those of you familiar with it will certainly recognize the waffle or the chiclets or the icons for the basic Office 365 suite of tools. And the one we're going to concentrate on tonight, just by way of demonstration and a little bit of background and how you might use it in your classroom, is forms. We're not going to go into any of the others here, notebook, teams, whatever, tonight. But one of the initiatives of the district this year, and it's been, if we recall, we've had Office 365 accessibility in these tools going back 3 years now in the district. Only within the last year has there been a significant rollout and push for more and more people to take advantage of it. And this year, that's going to be kicked up into higher gear as well. So we had a summer full of workshops. District administrators participated in workshops, so you'll find that they are much more knowledgeable of what the capabilities are for Office 365. So through the course of this year's webinars and perhaps some other initiatives, we're going to take some in-depth looks at these tools and what they can do and mean for you in your classroom, etc., plus a whole bunch of other things. But tonight, we're going to kick everything off with forms. And the reason why we're doing this right now is that it was suggested through some of the workshops and some of the aha moments as we discussed these tools, and in particular forms, was this would be a really easy, quick tool to get to know your students, to get to kick off the school year. You can create a form, a kind of a get to know you thing, and introduce yourself kind of thing. So I wanted to show you introduce it to you as a recipient of a form. Take it, answer the 7 brief questions, 6 multiple choice, and a little text question for number 7 for tonight. And I wanted to show you what that looks like on both sides of, say, the desk here. So this is the form that I created and sent out, and that let's refresh this. It looks like maybe at least 28 responses, which is pretty good. Thank you in advance for that. And you were advised all along that this was taken anonymously. We don't know who the responses come from, though in your classroom, you can make that a requirement. You can force the issue in some way, and I'll show you that very briefly. But this is the form. These are, as you create a form, they're automatically saved. And forms can look like a new form or a new quiz. Now, this is something that I think you're going to be very interested in your classroom. You can do little checks for understanding. You can do quizzes. You can do introductory things if you want to find out what students already know about a given topic and so on. You can do that as well. And forms kind of lends itself to more of a survey type nature, but indeed they're both very similar. So let's take a look at tonight's survey, and you'll notice that once a survey has been created and sent out, and you can send it out in a number of ways, we'll show you that, you get an indication here of how many responses have been received for that particular survey. So this is telling me that 28 people have responded to the survey, and these are the questions. And this is in the edit fashion. I can click on anything within the survey here. Notice how it slightly changes. This means I can go in and edit that question. I can do some things with it. I can correct it, edit it, and so on, and make changes here. But what I want to show you then, once you've created a survey, and I'll go back and just do one real quick for you, you can preview it. Interesting enough, and this is kind of how Microsoft is changing the landscape a little bit, you are looking at the computer view of the survey. You can also take look at the survey in a mobile view. This is what it would look like on your smartphone. So it's automatically compatible with any of those devices. Now, perhaps in the lower grades, that's not so significant, but perhaps at the secondary school or the high school, this is something that you might engage your students in, or it could be done outside the classroom, it could be done at home, and so on. So it's, again, it's automatically compatible. But here is our survey. There were 6 quick questions and a bit of a text. And then once you completed the survey, you, of course, submitted your responses. So I'm going to go back, and now we're going to look at the responses. So this applies for regardless of what kind of a survey you created, or quiz, for that matter. Think of them as being interchangeable. Here are all of the responses for those of you who took tonight's survey and responded to it.
Oh,
this is what it looks like.
Somebody else just answered.
Right? I got it. Number 29. I see that. Yep. Well, that's kind of interesting because you can do this in a classroom. And I think when we start talking to Dave Glahey, one of the things you can do is send out a quick survey or quiz in the classroom, and you can, again, see if you have 25 kids in your classroom, how many have and have not responded to the quiz before you go into it, or maybe want to talk about it, and so on. But notice here, this is initial summary information. It took everyone less than 1.5 minutes to complete the survey. And the survey is still active. That means this could change significantly. You can't take back an answer, but that is also one of the options that it could be retaken. But let's take a look at the kinds of information that you get when you send out a survey. How many questions was how many Sunday webinars have you attended over the years? And roughly we have 6 people. Notice what's going on here. I'm pointing to it, and it's pointing to that portion, and it automatically generated this little pie chart for welcome to the 8 of you who are attending your first webinar. You'll get our lovely welcome gift in the mail. Far, far in the future. And then, and so on. And thank you again to our regular attendees. We hope that number changes significantly this year. The next question, the main reason you have attended this, the survey or the webinars is, again, and you can also set up the survey so that it can accept multiple responses. That's why you see these numbers add up to far more than 29, because you can put in, you can indicate more than one response. That is true when you set up the survey, and that's one of the options. There's another question about Office 365. This is a good indication, or depending on your view, about half have signed in to their Office 365 account, and some of you have not. But notice a little indicator here, more detail. Let's take a look at more detail here. This would break down the responses. If we were collecting names, we would know who answered yes, who. So the first person who took the survey, yes, no, and so on all the way through. So that's again additionally could be valuable information, especially if you're doing this for grading purposes and so on. You would know, check for understanding, see, all right, I need to talk to a couple of students, maybe put them in a group and clarify something that was maybe in a quiz or something about the lesson that you were teaching. Roughly the same here. I kind of expected that would be the same, is how many have installed the Microsoft Office program on a computer other than the one in the school account. Again, very similar. And this was kind of a shot in the dark. It wasn't didn't know what to expect with this. I guess Microsoft Word and PowerPoint would have been the two most frequently used apps or programs within the Microsoft suite, but also notice that Excel is up there quite a bit too.
Yeah.
And again, I like how this looks like, say, for a presentation mode, you can it carries the legend over, which is really kind of neat. And OneNote and Class Notebook, Teams, we're going to see this change dramatically. I think I'm going to save this survey for the end of the year, Gene, when we throw it out again.
Yeah, run it again.
See what kind of changes we have.
Mm-hmm.
And here's one that we've been interested in the last we've had several discussions on this. Would you be interested in, or would anyone be interested in, you being our sample audience here, would you attend an after school or a weeknight webinar? That's kind of an interesting, lots of people on the fence, half the people on the fence. And we've done these after school, but I'm going to maybe pass that information on.
Might be a good one.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe it's the question is at fault, and I didn't ask it quite the way I wanted it. And then we had some 8 people responded to the general prompt. Let's take a look at this. And this was where the text was entered. So you don't see anything here other than there were 8 responses and just like a little caption of some of the detail. But here we are. Here, I don't know how well you can see that. It's mostly grayed out here, if you can read it. The 8 people who submitted a text response, and it wasn't required. That's one of the options, again, when you create a form. You can make questions in the survey or the quiz. You can make them mandatory. You can't move on unless you submit a response to that, and that wasn't the case here, obviously.
Raj?
So there's some information there.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
This is a little off, but look at number 4, and the answer is we are recording that, and we will be putting it online for you to view at another time in case you can't catch a Sunday night webinar.
And I think our total number of reviewings is what? 0?
No.
Over the year?
You mean?
Have we had people actually do it?
Yes.
What we haven't, to just take this a step further, what we haven't gotten yet, unless, Gene, you can correct me on this, is can someone who watches it at a later date receive credit for that later viewing?
Yeah, we're working on that. Yeah, we have to work that out.
So that has to be worked out as well. I guess,
yeah,
I would take your word for it, but I guess when we're dealing with credit and state regulations and stuff, we kind of have to follow their guidelines with that. But thank you, those of you who did respond to this.
Yeah.
And here we are. See, Gene, here is where I can share out these results to the survey and so on. Well, I want to look at the responses, and I can share those out.
Yeah.
Send and collect responses, so I can do it. I'll collect that link. If I do that, then I can go in the email and send you that link.
Certainly.
And you can share this as a template. You have a lot of options. We're not going to go into a great amount of detail with this, just to say that you have a great amount of flexibility. We're going to go back into the forms. We're going to go back to the questions. In fact, I'm going to keep going back to, I'll go back to my forms. This is this, if you have never created one, you will get this on your screen when you go into Microsoft Forms. The ones that you create are automatically saved. So you might see here a couple of are untitled. Those are ones that I was just kind of playing around with. Didn't give them a title. Here are some that we created, and you can use a theme and so on. But just very quickly, if you want to create a new form, I'll click this and just gloss over this real quick because it's something you can pretty much figure it out on your own anyway. Up here, I would just say this is my webinar demo form, and you always have the option to create a description. You can actually, as I did, quickly put in a graphic if you like. You can upload an image if you have a favorite one, maybe something for your class or something, maybe if it's a math quiz or a forum, you can add in some stuff there, or you can go out online depending on where you've saved it. Okay, I'm not going to do an image there. This is the meat and potatoes here. What kind of a question do you want to create? Multiple choice, text, found kind of a rating question, and then here are some other options here, something like a Likert scale. This is where you do, and you can do some ranking. It's really kind of full feature. Here's a multiple choice question. You would indicate here, let's say, okay, did the Bills disgrace themselves today? So option 1, I want yes. Option 2, no, or certain, whatever you could. This is for, you could just say, you know, absolutely. Whatever you want to, and one of these is correct. You can also add additional questions if you can have probably any number of options that you want to choose, say 7, and multiple choice doesn't have to be limited to 3 or 4. It could be any number than that, and so on. You can allow multiple answers, as I mentioned before. You can make the question required. You can also decide if you just want the questions to appear as a drop down. You never have the answers appearing there. You can shuffle the different options here so that some people sitting beside one another would have different options available to them if you want to do that in your class, and so on. Answer another question, or you can duplicate that question if you're following the same format. You can also use the up and down arrows to change the order, but once you have 2 or more questions. Here's a text question here. Here's a rating question. You can add level, you can change the levels here. There's quite a number of options here. What I want to get to over here are the settings, and this is where you can determine how you want, let's say we're talking about students respond to the form. You can record the name. Anyone with the link can respond. That's the option I used for the survey for tonight's webinar. So you would just click that, or only people within my organization can respond, and you can record the name. You don't have to record the name, so it would still appear as anonymous, but only people within the organization. So there's people within the Niagara Falls City School District with a bona fide credential for signing in. And then to take the survey or the quiz, they would have to sign in for that. And then some additional options. You can have a form if you're doing this in the classroom for a quiz. Let's say on Friday, kids, you're going to have a quiz on this chapter in the book. Well, then you could have the form available to automatically appear on a certain date and end on a certain date. You can shuffle, but you have a number of options in here, and I suggest you just play with those. You can change the theme. This is real quick. If you want to play with it, you can add your own theme by uploading an image, or you can pick some of the, if it's a science quiz, or then you can put in a flavorful thematic background there. There's some fun things. Microsoft is going to change and add to this the store that you can jazz up these if you like. All they do is just make it a little friendlier to the eye, and so on. And once you've created it, here's my form here that I created, the quiz, a couple of different questions, and so on. So you have a lot of options. Again, this is in the Microsoft suite down here. You always get back to your Microsoft greeting screen, your main screen, by this little waffle over here, and then you can look at the options here. And then this is the one where down at the end is forms. There are also additional things. We're going to go talk about these and a number of other things in a much more depth in future webinars. But quite honestly, once you're in forms, it's intuitive. You can go through and practice all you like. You can delete them if you don't like what you see. You can edit it, change it up anytime you want, use it, not use it, and they're, again, as I say, automatically saved as you go through. Now, Gene, if you have any additional questions.
Yeah, Raj, if you would go back to forms for 1 second. I don't know, were you going to talk about the already prepared forms that they could go on?
Not tonight.
Oh,
well,
okay.
Since you mentioned it, I have to now.
Well, I mean,
but I'm only going to tell you the difference. We did a form.
Yeah.
This is a quiz. See these little dots here?
Yeah.
You can use this. This is actually pretty powerful. You can go into a new quiz, and I'm going to look at some educational resources and pull a quiz that's already been prepared. Then I can modify it from, let's say, okay, David, we'll pick a second grade, New York State Learning Standards for second grade, and for, let's say, language arts. Let's say a reading standard for informational text, and let's see what happens here. These are all questions that have been designed by someone somewhere. Some of them have some Regents questions that you can pick and use that form here. Okay, and here these questions are already, you might have seen a little attribution there, failed to create a new form from the source and so on. But the nice thing is that option here. It'd probably be worth some time for some teachers to go in and look at and recommend some availability things. I've looked at some for some social studies, some math things, and just to pull some out to see if I like them or not. But yeah, that's this was one here. How to analyze how two authors present the same topic and so on. So but again, that's an in-depth study, probably worth a webinar in and of itself, or at least a good portion of one. But yeah, now, Gene, I think we could turn it over to Dave and let him bring us up to date on where he is with in his.
Yeah, well, while you were talking, I was looking back
dilemma.
I was looking back to see if the forms that I made last year are still in my my Office 365, and they all are. So I think I have some kind of practical examples of some forms that people could make or use in their classroom.
Well, why don't you start with that?
Sure.
All right, hang on. What we have to do, I think, is make him a presenter, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I just made Dave a presenter. And now, Dave, we're going to give you the... Oh, why can't I give you the screen? Okay. Yeah. Raj, can you do it? Maybe can you give him the make him the presenter?
Is that Dave's screen there?
Is that your screen, Dave?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's his screen.
Okay. Okay. I did it and didn't even know. Dave, are you there?
Go ahead, Dave.
We've lost Dave.
I can tell you about Dave's screen a little bit, but he's not muted, is he?
No. Hang on here. I don't see Dave. I made him a presenter, and he's unmuted. Uh-oh. Dave, what have we done to you? Dave, can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Oh, okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I think we can.
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is my login screen for Office 365, and Forms is right here. And I already have a tab open for it, but last year I used Forms and a lot of other things in Office 365 with my second grade students, so 7 and 8 years old. And I think I did an end of the year technology survey just like you did, except I did it with my students. And I think I used a question type that you didn't show, Roger, which was one.
The rank, yeah.
Yes, this is a rank order one. These were all the different technology components we used throughout the year. Think Central is Journeys, Pearson Realizes Math, and then Raz Kids Listening Center is something I do on my own in my classroom. Smarty Ants, MobyMax, BrainPop Junior, Office 365. All of these are things that are available and are, I think, connected to the district's Symbaloo page on the opening screen of the district's website. But I asked the students to rank their favorite activities so they can kind of drag these boxes and move them around in the order they want. And then I asked them, what was your favorite computer activity and why? So the response, the way it shows up is interesting, visually very interesting. It looks like the ones that have the dark orange or the orange are the ones that were ranked first most often. And the ones that had the dark blue were ranked lowest most often. But it gives me kind of a snapshot of which things my students like, and you can see that they really did like using Office 365. We use it as a class a lot, especially the second half of the year. So,
if you
and then
click on the more, Dave, click on the more details.
Sure. Yep.
And this is where
so I can see each individual. So this is the name of my student. I didn't do this anonymously, but that's the name of the student. I can look across here and see how they rank. Each individual student ranked each of the 8 different technology components we used last year. So that's the more detail with the first question, and then the second question I asked was where they could type in a response. So this one was just interesting to see what other, what each individual student said. So it was an interesting bit of feedback to get just about technology. But in terms of practical matters, other forms that I made were more like what you were describing, like this, which is like a very quick exit ticket that might go with something that we were doing in math. So I had a couple of math problems. I pulled some images off the internet to review time. And I let the students take these, and this is really valuable because you can go in and not just get a snapshot of the class, whether or not class understood a given concept, but the 2 students that didn't get it, when you go into more detail, you can find out who those students are, so you can go back and give them some some instruction that'll help them with the particular things they're struggling with. So this one was this one was only 5 questions, but I would probably use it this year for even shorter than that, just 1 question or 2 questions at the end of a lesson, kind of like an exit ticket to get an idea of which students, what the students understood. So that was another way. And then we just used it for fun too. We did a survey about whether or not they think Florida is a better place to live. I don't know if we were thinking of Eugene when we did that. And just to one of the things I was going to mention, I know Roger said that they want to show more about teams on another day, but one of the ways that you can push, once you create a survey, you can push it out to your class through Teams. And I know they'll go into this in more detail on another webinar when they get more specific about Teams, but just to show you what that looks like, you can copy a link into Teams. So this is where, I think I sent that review. So in Teams, this is sort of, it kind of looks like, I guess, a text that you'd be doing with someone, but you can send a link. So the students would see this link, they could click on it, and that's how they got that's how they filled out the form and answered the questions. And just so you know how intuitive and easy this is to do, by the end of the year, I want to say, fun stuff here. My second grade students, this is a form that Ronnie, one of my students, made. So the students learned how to use the program and used it fairly easily. So these are 7- and 8-year-olds. So they were able to, figure out some of the different forms. So if I click, I think this is still an active link, so I can show what it looks like. But so this is a question that Ronnie wrote. Jake got $500. His sister gave him $500. How much money does Jake have? And then he put in some answers, and he pushed that out to his classmates. And so it was really interesting to see the students have some capacity to use forms and not just use it from my perspective as a teacher. So I think this year, what I intend to use it for more is especially these very quick exit tickets. It's just a great way to get a quick snapshot of the class, and it does the correcting for you. So anything that like that kind of cuts down on the administrative work that teachers have to do to get information about where their class is, makes it easier, faster, and like I said, all of this stuff is stored year after year after year, so it's easy to go, it's stored throughout the year, so it's easy to go back and find and review something that you gave a while ago, and and get that information from it. For example, I looked back at this end of the year technology survey from my students last year to kind of get an idea of what things I should be thinking about rolling out first. And maybe with the ones lower, I can find out ways to use it in a that's more engaging for them.
Yep. Dave, I saw something in your Math Unit 8 review. Could you pull that back up?
Sure. Yep.
And look at the responses. Go into the response tab.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about post the score. We didn't talk about what these responses look like if we export them into Excel, but I'm a little curious about the two other tabs, the post the scores,
right,
and review answers. Review
I don't
the
know.
answers.
I'll try clicking on it.
I don't know if that's new or not, but I don't recall. Well, that's interesting. There you go, because you gave a point value to some of the questions.
It looks like it's giving information about a specific student. Like I can, select the student here, and it tells how long that student took.
Yes. Okay.
Question. So it's kind of drilling into each question. It looks like. Go back here. I'm not sure what post scores means.
I think so you have to click on a preview.
Yeah, it says not yet posted.
Right. Okay. So this was her response.
Right.
Okay. The detail.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, I honestly, like, I think I noticed those tabs, but didn't think much about them because, in second grade, the report card is not driven by number grades like it is with the grades after second grade. So we're filling out more information that relates directly to the standard. If I'm looking at the report card, if they understand 2-digit addition and subtraction, then I know what I'm looking back at. The actual number score is not, posting the score or actually having the number score is not as relevant for me to fill out the report card. But there may be some capability within the system to post scores and maybe accumulate scores so that
that's what I'm wondering. If you click on the post scores tab again, and there was a little checkbox next to each student's name. Right. Okay, and then in the upper right-hand corner, you could post that score, whatever that means. I'm not really sure what that means.
Right, and it looks like when I posted it, it kind of disappeared. Then it moved down here to a changed status. Now, I don't know what that would mean for what the student looks at on their when my students signed into Office 365, they were generally looking at a screen that looked very similar to this one that you're looking at, where they've got the tiles at the top. Recent documents that they may have opened were down here. I don't know if those posted scores would show up in a certain place, maybe within forms, but
I think that's worth some investigation.
That wouldn't send it back to the student, would it?
I don't know, but my guess would be posting it sort of finalizes it for some purpose, and I just don't know what that purpose is.
You're gonna have to check that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at that. There was a little question mark on the next screen about that. That might have clarified some of that, but I'm not really sure. Like, yeah.
Posting scores will give respondents access to view feedback and the results of the quiz. Respondents can view the results.
There you go. That's okay.
Okay, so they can see which ones they got wrong and what the correct answer was.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah. They can get there.
I think I didn't need to do that as much either, because a lot of times I would use the forms and then we would get right into reviewing our answers together. So we would go through it together anyway. But this is a maybe more efficient way, if you're in high school and you have, a more limited amount of time, then you might just post the score so the students can look and see the feedback.
It's kind of personal feedback for each student.
Right.
So each student can see what he needs to work on.
Yep. So do you have any plans for, I know you have to get the activation going for your students this year, but
where
do you think you're going this year with some of this? With
I think I'm going to introduce forms and last year I introduced OneNote first, and OneNote has some really great capability within it, but it takes a little time to learn how to navigate. It's not terrible, but for second graders, for my grade level, it's a little, it takes a little time to explain how to get into the document that we're working on, where it is. You have to get into word processing. I think this year I'm going to start with Teams and forms. And maybe Sway as well, which is kind of a simplified version of PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Because I think they're a little more intuitive. They're easy for the students to learn. They have a lot of capability in terms of me getting feedback from forms and from students being able to share and see what other students are thinking within Teams.
Right.
I think when you take a little more time to students really love Teams. It's kind of like,
I know one of the. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's kind of like allowing. I mean, a lot of in the primary grades we do a lot of like think, pair, share activities where students are talking to one another and discussing things. And when you use Teams, it kind of opens it up to it's like a group chat where someone says something, you can respond to what they said, you can see what everyone else in the room is talking about and thinking about, and you have a record of it. So you can go back and look at it. Even if you were absent or if you didn't.
Right. And you can control all of that. You can turn features on and off as the teacher when you set up the teams and the channels and so on. But we're going to get into that.
We have discussions about math.
Good. Yeah, right.
About journeys we did here. Sometimes I would post a question. This one is, we had one where Mr. Carroll's channel where they could ask a few questions, and we did ones where it was just for fun, where they would experiment with. They were experimenting with using emoji. They can use emojis. They can, put stickers. But this one is extremely intuitive for students to use because it looks just like texting that you see people doing on a phone. So they already know how to use it. And then, nothing is anonymous. Like these, you know, I explained to them right away that like whenever you're having conversations, we know who you are, so it's a good chance to talk about, you know, about digital citizenship and you know, making sure that you're thoughtful about the way that you use technology and that things that you say are assigned to you. But you know, it's just it has so many possibilities for allowing students to communicate with one another that go beyond sort of you know, just their share where they're just talking to somebody that happens to be near them.
I think, and again, we're going to be going into some good depth on when we create teams and so on. Microsoft, through the course of the summer, has added some great capabilities and some added features to all of their apps, but in particular Teams, which is, as we understand it, that's where they're really pushing things. Notice on your main board there, it says class notebook. Well, when you create a team, you can put a notebook right into the team and not have it as a, you know, a distinct feature separate from all that. So they're really thinking that Teams is the way to go. And again, we're going to hear more about that and show more about that in the coming weeks and months when we start really featuring some of the unique provisions within Office 365 and everything you see in front of you right now.
Yeah, and as it relates to forms, Teams was a very efficient way of pushing the form out to your students. So once you have them using Office 365 and they sign in, then they can go to Teams, you know, go to a particular channel that you've created. In that channel, they can see where you've, you know, they can see a link where you've pushed something out. As soon as they click on it, then it takes them right to the form. This one was one where I only allowed one per person, so you can see it doesn't start. But you know, it was a very effective way to get them right into using that form by pushing it out through Teams. So you know, you can see how all of these things end up becoming connected with one another. A student makes a sway, which is like a PowerPoint that shows some information they've learned. They can share it with other students through Teams by posting that sway on Teams. So all of those things can kind of be used together.
Right, and the same with, they can share PowerPoints that they create, as we were toying with that a little bit at one point in your class last year as well. And kids were sharing those out as well. Yeah, pretty terrific. And again, these were second graders who handled it extremely well, I must say.
And I think like, I mean, I spent so much time at second grade, I wouldn't pretend to hazard a guess, but I think it would be difficult for kindergartners and first graders to, you know, sort of efficiently use Office 365. That's not to say that they couldn't. I'm sure they could use forms even in grades as young as that, because it probably looks similar to things that they've seen on computers, where you're just clicking in a box or selecting something. But I certainly, at my school, I certainly appreciate all the work that the kindergarten and first grade teachers do to prepare them to be ready to do these things in second grade. So I think that going forward, it's certainly to the students' benefit. The earlier a lot of these things are introduced, especially within OneNote, there's a lot of word processing functions. I think the sooner they get exposure to those things, the better off they'll be for taking electronic state tests, which I believe are rolling out in more and more grades as the years.
That train's in motion.
Yes. Yeah.
We have a question about how students log in to Office 365. And so, go ahead. How did you have them do it?
I can kind of show how they do that. What I would advise for the younger grades, especially, but, you know, I think it works well for the older grades too, is if you create either a favorite or a link or something that connects to the district's Symbaloo page, Let me just go to that. Office 365 is this button down here. So you select here, and well, it's defaulting to mine because it's already open, but you'll see a login screen. And I believe the student logins are the student name that they would use to turn their computers on. So, you know, for me, that's DS Glahey. For another student, it might be PL Brown. Whatever their network username is, and then with @nfschools.net. That's that would be their username. Their login, their sort of login name, whatever that is, with @nfschools.net. And then the password, I think, initially defaulted to their student number, but I can't say for certain that's. I don't remember how I got that on, but I tend in the primary grade, because I teach in the primary grades, I try to as soon as I get them logged in, I try to change their password to something that we use universally for other sites. So if there's an ability to change a password, I usually change it to the one that we use for Think Central, the same one we use for RazKids, the same one we use for whatever else, because it creates less confusion for them. But you know, the other thing is, if they use the same computer every day, if you have, you know, one-to-one computing and you have the numbered computers, I assign my students a number, so they're using the same computer every day. So if they save their username and password, which I think a lot of my students did, as soon as they click on the Office 365 link, it just opens on their computer.
We found, and I didn't know this until I sat in one of the sessions this summer, is if you're using the Edge browser, you've signed in to the kids log into on their devices. If they use the Edge browser and go to office.com, they're automatically signed into their 365 account. Mm-hmm. There's no secondary sign in.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
yeah, that works for teachers too.
Yeah. For anybody using the Edge browser,
yeah,
right, and you have the account and you go there, you'll be logged in, which is interesting, and I think, you know, backs up where Microsoft is coming from, just to make it as seamless as possible to use anything that they're offering here.
Yeah.
Yep.
The first time logging in younger students was a little challenging because of the most of the products that they use in the primary grades do not require them to type a full username address, you know, plbrown@nfschools.net. So that took a little time, but you know, once you get over that hump, there's a lot of stuff to do on the other side of that. So it's worth the time.
So coming and on the horizon is a single sign-on for any and all applications for, you know, if you're within the district. So it would be right. Symbaloo taken to the next level, where you just pick the button and you're signed in automatically, kind of stuff.
Right.
And there are products out there that have been looked at that are coming, and they understand, well, how many passwords do you and I have? You know,
right.
It's, you know, it's going to be that and more for the students as they progress through, and whatever else they're doing as well.
Yeah.
But even without that, I would say it's certainly not a barrier to.
No, and it's just,
it takes a little extra time.
Right, it's part of doing business in the technological world anymore. You know, it's a password world, I guess.
Right.
So, Gene, we're getting close to the magic hour.
Close to that. I have just a few little things
on our.
How do I hand the?
Okay.
I think I've just done it. I think I've just done it. Now, do you have my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Dave. Thank
he
you very
took it,
much.
Dave. You didn't have to.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
No.
Thank you.
Hey, well, thank you. You know, really, I mean, you've shown a lot of things. I mean, the idea of forums is phenomenal, and you kind of hinted a little bit with that Teams thing, which is it's an incredible tool that we're going to have to go into very soon, and probably at some nice depth so people can pick it up, and I think they will really find it very useful, very helpful, and efficient. Okay. Hey, as we said before, a couple of quick announcements to end our webinar. First of all, next week, Mr. Laurie will be joining us, and we're sure you'll want to hear what he has to say. So don't forget, we'll be sending out an email and a registration so you can register and join us next Sunday. In about 1 hour, you will receive a thank you email. Thank you for attending. And we do ask you to open that up because inside there is a link to a very short survey asking some questions about tonight's webinar and some asking if you have any suggestions for further work on what we've talked about tonight. And that will be sent in to the Teacher Resource Center Friday so that your credit will be given 1 hour of TRC credit. Okay. Hey, couple of things that we wanted to show you. This is, of course, the Teacher Resource Center, which you can reach by going to the district site, going to staff. Teacher Resource Center is right here. There is another important site that we'd like to show you very briefly, Technology Resources for Teachers. This is where Roger and I and Marie and Shirley put some things that we feel might be helpful to you. There are several articles here, several sites or pages that you might find useful. So first of all, the first one is a Back to School 2018. Roger and I have collected a number of good ideas, resources that you might be able to use. This is a flipboard, and if you click on this, it will take you to a really cool flipboard with, I don't know, 30 or so resources with ideas that you might be able to use at the beginning of the year and throughout the year. Many of them are, most of them are not technology oriented, so these are just things that you can use in your classroom. Another one that we do keep up and add things weekly is called Informal Professional Development Articles. And again, this kind of deals with articles that we find that you can use in your classroom, ideas, so forth and so on. Again, these are not technology oriented for the most part, but great ideas and articles on topics that you might find interesting, and you might want to take a look at that. If you are new to 365, as the survey showed many of you are, if you are not familiar with how to log on in the first place, go to Technology Resources for Teachers. Then there's this page, Microsoft Office 365. It'll show you how to log on. And down below, again, we have a group of articles that you might find useful. And if you have any questions, any concerns, any comments, please let Roger or me know. We'd be very glad to help you out. And with that, we're going to say goodnight. It's 9 o'clock. We're glad you joined us. We hope you'll consider joining us next week. Thank you again. Dave, thanks a lot for being with us. It's incredible.
Happy to do it.
Incredible what these second graders are doing. So hopefully that'll give the teachers some ideas. And again, Raj, any last words before I shut us down?
Just thanks you everyone for attending tonight. Have a great week. I know there's some staff development going on this week, and I hope that benefits everyone. Gene and I are participating as well. Yeah. And we look forward to seeing everybody next Sunday night, and join us with Superintendent Mark Laurie for his presentation as well.
And with that, we'll say goodnight. Thank you.
Yes. Good night, everyone.